I'm sure you'll be aware that the World Blitz Championship has just taken place in Berlin over the last few days, and what a really exciting event this was, with the lead changing hands right up till the end. Several players in contention. Magnus Carlsen was playing, having just won the Rapid title, also in Berlin the day before. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, a real Blitz specialist. Sergei Karyakin, and finally the winner turned out to be Alexander Grishuk from Russia. This was his third World Blitz title. He's previously won in 2006 and in 2012, so this didn't happen by accident. He is another real Blitz specialist. He finished with 15.5 out of 21, and he really got into the groove. He concluded with 8 out of 9 in the last 9 games. So yeah, congratulations to him. And I'm going to go through one of his games from the tournament. And before I do that, you can actually see this game live. This was captured by my colleague here at Power Play Chess, Pascal Simon, who was in Berlin, managed to squeeze through the crowds to record some of the Blitz games, and he's captured this one, which is Grishuk with white against Russian Grandmaster Dmitry Bocharov, who hasn't got such a great elo, but well, had a pretty good tournament. So I don't think I'm spoiling things by saying that Grishuk won this game. If you want to have a look at the live game, then please follow the link. I think you can see that in the video description. Or if you want to see my take on this game, then do just carry on watching here. So here we are, Grishuk with the white pieces. Now, he follows a kind of non-standard way of playing the openings. Clearly he doesn't want to be caught out by any opening preparation, so plays this rather unusual move, bishop f4. It's a kind of modified London system. And Bocharov plays almost like he's heading for a kind of King's Indian. You know, clearly wants to get in e5 here. So knight f3, all pretty normal so far, and knight h5. So, I mean, black could play g6 there, but that knocks the bishop back. And now e5. And the players have reached a kind of Philidor's opening. You know, normally this would come about by e4, e5, knight f3, d6. But with the difference that this bishop stands on d2, to be honest, it doesn't make a huge difference to the position, whether it's on c1 or d2. The bishop doesn't stand particularly well on d2, so it's got to move on anyway. So it's a kind of odd Philidor position. The players were taking up quite a lot of time, I think, just feeling their way through this position, because it is just a little bit different. And you know, when there's tension in the centre, when the pawn structure isn't fixed, that's when you need to be quite careful. So standard Philidor position minus, well, with the exception this bishop is on d2, and black plays c6. The idea is to expand on the queen side with b5, and it's essential that white cuts this out with a4. And here you can see on the video that Bocharov actually hesitates. He first goes to grab this e-pawn and exchange on d4, and this is the other way of playing the position. You can take and play here, for example, rook e8 to gain some pressure on the e4 pawn, you know, maybe with knight c5. And so on, and maybe later on perhaps break with d5, or you can drop the bishop back to f8. But the other way of playing this position, Bocharov hesitated and settled on b6, and I think this is a more interesting way to play the position. So bishop g5, the bishop had to move on. a6, queen e2. So b5 still isn't possible because of the pin on the a file. And here I like the move bishop b7, and I feel that black should be alright here, because it's difficult for white to hold back b5, and this gives black pretty decent counter chances on the queen side and indeed through the centre. But instead of this, Bocharov played queen c7, and this gave Grishuk his chance. You can see that Grishuk seized the opportunity to play d5 very quickly. He played this really quickly. This is a nice move to play because it fixes the structure. Black does not want to take on d5 because suddenly, with possession over d5, well, everything is going white's way. Of course, that can't even be taken because suddenly there are two pieces on prise. So, yeah, one would also like to play bishop b7 here to get some kind of Sicilian type pawn structure, but the problem is that the pawn on a6 is on prise. That shows queen e2 was quite foresighted to put pressure on that diagonal. So Bocharov had to fix the structure, and this is a very interesting moment in the game. Up to this point, both players playing quite slowly. I should mention the time control is 3 minutes, plus the players get 2 seconds each time they make a move. But yeah, up to this point, quite slowly. But now, with the structure fixed, Grishuk goes into automatic pilot mode. Now he knows where to put his pieces. And the plan, he finds, is very, very effective. In any normal game of chess, a classical game of chess, if you have a clear plan, this is very, very helpful if you have the initiative. In Blitz chess, this is even more extreme, because when you have the initiative, it's very hard for your opponent to fight against that. Let's see what happens. Bishop e3, the bishop comes back, that preempts this knight retreat, and now rook b1. Here's the start of this very nice queenside play. So white wants to play b4, cracking open the b file to get to this weak square here, weak pawn, weak square b6. Bishop g5, Bocharov exchanges off this so-called bad bishop, but this doesn't really affect things too much. It's this queenside play which is really very nice plan. Here one might imagine that black could exchange and maybe use this square, but actually the knight is needed to defend the b6 pawn, and white has a really simple plan here. The bishop drops back to f1, the knight comes into c4, and there is enormous pressure on this weak b6 pawn. Bocharov played g6. He desperately needs counterplay on the king side. Bishop f1. Grishuk just playing these moves very quickly now. Bishop f1, excellent move, making room for the knight to come to c4. But also, that bishop protects the king side. We'll see that's very important. The bishop is just tucked out of the way. Does a really good job on f1. f5. Now white could just seal the king side here with f3. But Grishuk very quickly, very confidently selects a much more active plan. He takes black on the king side, and I think this is a very good idea. So you don't want to play rook takes, because then white has control over e4. As every Russian schoolboy knows, you should recapture with the knight's pawn. But here's Grishuk's idea. Of course, he doesn't leave those pawns mobile. He blockades with the f pawn. And with the bishops exchanged, this is actually very, very effective, because it's black's king that can come under fire. Bocharov exchanges, but with that pawn solidly blockaded, this is nice for white. Queen f6, he's trying to get some counterplay. The knight is hit, but knight e2, and this knight is bouncing round to the king side. Knight e5, so this is the plus side of black's counterplay. At least he's found a nice square for the knight on e5, but Grishuk opens up the b file, and you can see that that square is pretty weak. And watch out for that pawn on d6 too. Check from the queen, and maybe knight g6 is stronger here, but king h8 played, and now knight f4. So that knight reaches this glorious square on f4, looking at e6. We're looking at some absolutely key squares in the position, and crucially maintaining the blockade of that f5 pawn. Rook g8. So semi-open g file for black, but that bishop very nicely placed on f1, protecting g2. So actually there are no problems for Grishuk on the g file. And now you can see that black's position is under intense pressure here. All these pieces from white beautifully placed. Queen g5. In fact, I mean here, Grishuk, I mean he was playing his move so quickly, he was just in overdrive here, and played a very natural exchange sacrifice. Rook takes knight. In fact, rook d6 is winning material straight away. But, well, I'm certainly not going to berate Grishuk for missing that, because what he played in the game feels so natural. And, I mean, you could see on the clocks, it's just about visible in the video, that the players were down to their last few seconds here. Bocharov had less time. They were playing on their increments, so each time they make a move they got 2 seconds. Here this is almost impossible to defend. Certainly in a blitz game it's all over. Every single one of white's pieces beautifully active. Black's position has just collapsed. Rook b7. Now it's all happening on the 7th rank. I mean, black should exchange queens here, but Bocharov was trying to connect his pieces with knight f6, but now he's utterly lost, and Grishuk's initiative just carries through. And here, well, Bocharov kind of lost on time and resigned all at the same time. You can see white is just a piece up, and it's really gone. I think an incredibly impressive demonstration from Grishuk there. I just want to emphasize once again the power of the initiative. It's the same in classical chess, but in blitz chess this is really emphasized, and so interesting to see. Once the pawn structure was fixed, then Grishuk could go into automatic mode and play this. Well, it's actually quite a standard plan with rook b1 and b4, but standard for players as experienced as Grishuk. As I said, my colleague Pascal managed to record several blitz games which we've posted, and in another clip I'm going to be introducing those other games. We've got some great players. We've got Vishy Anand, Pavel Elyanov, Rustam Kazimzhanov, and several other big names. So they're well worth watching, and do check those out. And I'm going to introduce them in another clip.